Officer, you really shouldn't have done that. Camille Brooks didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The sound of the envelope tearing had already cut through the North Harbor Police Station lobby like something louder than a shout. Officer Daniel Keller held the thick brown packet in both hands, one corner of the federal seal still clinging to the flap. Sergeant Mark Harlan stood beside him with an amused look that had not yet realized it was about to disappear. Camille remained on the other side of the counter, rainwater darkening the shoulders of her charcoal coat, her fingers resting calmly against the edge of the laminate desk. "What?" Keller said, glancing at the torn seal. Camille looked at the packet, then at him. "You were told not to open it." Harlan gave a short laugh. "Lady, this is a police station. We decide what gets opened here." For 2 seconds, nobody moved. Then Camille's phone vibrated once inside her coat pocket. Not a call. Not a message. One sharp electronic pulse. Her expression changed so slightly that Harlan missed it, but Officer Ethan Cole, standing near the records window, did not. Camille reached into her pocket, looked at the screen, and felt a cold weight settle behind her ribs. Seal compromised. The words disappeared almost immediately beneath a security notification, but she had already seen enough. Keller began pulling documents from the packet. Let's see what was so important. Camille's eyes followed the pages, not his face. Put them back. Or what? Harlan asked. The lobby smelled faintly of wet wool, burnt coffee, and floor cleaner. Outside, rain tapped steadily against the front windows. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed above 6 officers who suddenly seemed much too interested in the black woman standing alone at the counter. 12 minutes earlier, Camille had walked through those same doors carrying nothing but the sealed packet, a federal contractor credential, and precise delivery instructions. She had been told to hand the packet directly to the station's evidence custodian, obtain a receiving code, and leave. Simple. Routine. At least, that was what it had sounded like. Harlan had looked at her credential once, then looked at her face longer. "Where'd you get this?" he had asked. "It was issued to me." "That's not what I asked." Camille had answered anyway. She had learned years ago that some people asked questions to understand, while others asked them to remind you who they believed was in control. Harlan belonged to the second kind. Now Keller flipped another page. His smile faded. Ethan Cole noticed first. A heading near the top of the document was visible for less than a second before Keller covered it with his hand. Evidence Integrity Review. Below it, another line. North Harbor Police Station. Ethan straightened. Harlan saw his reaction. "What?" Keller whispered. Camille's voice remained quiet. "The problem isn't that you opened my envelope." Harlan's eyes lifted toward her. Camille looked directly at him. "It's that the envelope was about you." For 1 second, Sergeant Mark Harlan did not move. The confidence in his face stayed where it was, but something underneath it tightened. His eyes dropped to the page in Officer Daniel Keller's hands, then shifted toward Camille Brooks. She noticed the change because she had been watching him carefully since the moment she entered the building. 12 minutes earlier, the lobby had seemed ordinary enough. A television mounted near the ceiling played the local weather with the sound turned low. A dispatcher carried a paper cup past the front desk. Someone laughed behind a half-closed office door. Camille had stepped inside, shaken rain from the edge of her coat, and approached the counter with the sealed packet held flat against her chest. "I need the evidence custodian," she had said. Harlan had looked up slowly. First at the packet. Then at her. Then back at the packet. For what? Authorized delivery. Camille placed her credential on the counter. Harlan picked it up between 2 fingers as though it had arrived from somewhere questionable. He read her name, Camille Brooks, then glanced at her photograph. "This yours?" Camille had almost smiled. Almost. "Yes." Behind her, the front doors opened. A white delivery driver entered carrying 2 pizza boxes. He nodded toward the desk and said, "Evening." Harlan waved him through toward the back offices without asking his name, checking identification, or wondering how he had gotten inside. Camille watched him disappear down the hallway. Then Harlan looked at her credential again. "Where did you get this?" It was issued through my agency. What agency? It is listed directly under my photograph. Harlan's jaw shifted. He did not like being corrected, even gently. Camille knew the type. Men who turned every answer into a challenge because admitting they had overlooked something felt too much like surrender. Officer Keller came over from the side desk and leaned against the counter. "What is she trying to deliver?" he asked. "She." "Not Miss Brooks." "Not ma'am." Not even the name printed clearly on the identification card between them. Harlan tapped the envelope. "Claims it is federal." Camille kept her voice even. "It is federal." Keller gave a quiet laugh. "Sure looks official." He reached for it. Camille pulled it back half an inch. "It has to go directly to the evidence custodian." That was when Harlan's eyes changed for the first time. "Not much. Just enough." He looked at a small printed case number near the upper right corner of the packet. His gaze stopped there a fraction too long. Camille saw it. He recognized something. "What did you say your name was again?" he asked. "Camille Brooks." "And you work for who?" "The information is on the credential you are holding." Harlan stared at her for another moment, then set the card down. Evidence custodian went home. Camille checked the wall clock. 7:43. Her delivery authorization said the custodian was scheduled until 9. "Then I can wait." "No need." Harlan reached toward the packet. "I can take it." Camille did not release it. "I need a receiving code." The temperature in the exchange seemed to drop. Keller stopped smiling. Harlan leaned forward. "You come into my station and tell me how I receive paperwork." Camille met his eyes. "I am telling you how this paperwork has to be received." Rain whispered against the glass behind her. Somewhere deeper in the building, a printer started and stopped. Harlan looked again at the case number, and Camille finally understood that his irritation was not entirely about her. Part of it was fear. She just did not know why yet. Then Keller reached across the counter, took the packet before she could stop him, and Harlan did not tell him to give it back. Daniel Keller held the packet just beyond Camille's reach, but Mark Harlan was no longer watching her. He was staring at the case number. That tiny shift told her more than any confession could have. A moment earlier, he had treated the envelope like a joke. Now his shoulders had gone rigid. "Give me that," Harlan said. Keller handed it over. Harlan turned the packet toward the desk lamp and read the number again, slowly this time. Camille watched his thumb move across the printed line. He knew it. Maybe not the entire file, but enough to recognize danger. "You said the evidence custodian is gone," Camille said. Harlan looked up. "He is." "Then seal it back into the transfer sleeve and call the number on my authorization." His eyes narrowed. "You seem very interested in telling officers how to do their jobs." "I am interested in following the instructions attached to mine." Keller gave a quiet laugh from beside him. "You always talk like that." Camille did not answer. She had spent too many years learning which questions deserved a response and which were designed only to make her smaller. Harlan placed the packet on the counter but kept one hand over it. "How long have you been carrying this?" "Since 6:32 this evening." "Where did you pick it up?" "That information is restricted." Keller looked at Harlan. "Restricted from us?" Camille met his gaze. "Restricted from anyone not listed on the transfer chain." The humor disappeared from Keller's face. Harlan leaned closer. "This is North Harbor Police. We are not anyone." Camille heard the meaning beneath the words. Not professionalism. Ownership. This building was theirs. The desks were theirs. The cameras were theirs. The rules, apparently, became theirs the moment someone walked through the door. She glanced toward Officer Ethan Cole near the records window. He was pretending to sort paperwork, but his attention was fixed on Harlan. Something about the case number had affected him too. That made two people. Camille felt the first real chill of the evening, and it had nothing to do with the rain outside. "Call your captain," she said. Harlan's expression hardened. "My captain is not coming down here because a courier demands it." I did not demand anything. Sounds like it. Camille looked at the packet. Then call the federal contact printed on the transfer sheet. Harlan said nothing. Keller shifted his weight. Ethan stopped moving altogether. For the first time, the room felt quieter than it should have. Harlan picked up Camille's credential again and studied the agency line. Federal Compliance Contractor, he read aloud. That does not make you law enforcement. I never said it did. Does not make you important either. Camille felt the old familiar pressure behind her ribs, the kind that came when a stranger decided dignity was something she needed to earn in front of him. She kept her voice steady. The packet does not care whether you think I am important. Ethan looked down quickly, almost hiding a reaction. Harlan did not. His jaw tightened. You have no idea what happens in this building. Camille held his gaze. That is interesting. What is? You have not opened the packet yet, but you are already worried about what it says. The silence changed. Keller looked at Harlan. Harlan looked back at him. Something passed between them without words. Camille saw it clearly this time. Not annoyance. Not pride. Recognition. Harlan placed the credential down with deliberate care. Daniel, he said. Keller reached for the packet. Camille stepped forward just enough to make both men look at her. Do not break that seal. Keller paused. Harlan never took his eyes off Camille. Then he gave one small nod. Daniel Keller slipped a finger beneath the edge of the seal and tore it open. The sound was soft, almost ordinary, but the room reacted as if something heavier had fallen. Ethan Cole stopped pretending to sort papers. Camille Brooks watched the torn strip curl away from the envelope and settle against Keller's thumb. Mark Harlan did not smile this time. There, Keller said, forcing a casual tone. Mystery. Solved. Camille looked at him. No. You just created another one. Keller pulled the first document free. Harlan stepped closer immediately, close enough that his shoulder nearly touched Keller's. Camille noticed that too. A man who had claimed the packet was meaningless now seemed unwilling to let anyone else read it first. Keller scanned the page. His expression shifted. What is this? Harlan took it from him. Let me see. Camille stayed where she was. The rain continued against the windows, steady and patient. Harlan read the heading once. Then again. Federal Evidence Integrity Review. His thumb moved lower. Preservation Authorization. North Harbor Police Station. The color drained slightly from his face. Ethan saw it. So did Camille. Sergeant. Ethan said. Harlan folded the page inward before he could read more. Nothing. Ethan looked at the packet. It says North Harbor. I said it is nothing. The words came too quickly. Keller pulled out a second page. Mark. Harlan turned toward him. Keller pointed to a line halfway down. Camille could not see the full sentence from where she stood, but she could see enough printed words to understand why Keller's hand had gone still. Evidence room access records. Deleted surveillance files. Chain of custody discrepancies. Harlan snatched the page from him. Put everything back. Camille spoke before Keller could move. Do not alter the order of those documents. Harlan looked at her sharply. You are done giving instructions. The transfer chain was already compromised when the seal was broken. Stop talking like you are in charge. Camille's pulse had begun to climb, but her voice remained level. I am not in charge of your station. She glanced at the torn envelope between them. Neither are you in charge of federal evidence. Keller looked toward Harlan, waiting. That was the moment Camille understood something important. Keller was reckless. Harlan was afraid. Those were not the same thing. Harlan gathered the pages and pushed them back toward the envelope, but one sheet slipped free and floated to the floor. Ethan stepped forward instinctively. Leave it, Harlan said. Ethan froze. The page landed face up. Near his shoe. 3 lines were visible beneath the fluorescent light. Target location. North Harbor Police Station. Immediate preservation upon compromise. Ethan stared at the words. Sergeant, what does immediate preservation mean? Harlan's eyes moved toward Camille. She answered instead. It means no records should be changed, moved, deleted, or destroyed. Keller gave a nervous laugh. That sounds dramatic. Camille looked at him. It is not dramatic. It is procedural. Harlan stepped around the counter and picked up the fallen page himself. Everyone get back to work. Nobody did. The lobby had changed. 5 minutes earlier, Camille had been the outsider everyone could dismiss. Now every officer within hearing distance knew there was a federal document naming their building, and their sergeant was trying very hard to make it disappear from the room. Ethan's gaze shifted toward a security camera mounted near the ceiling. A tiny red light glowed beneath the lens. Harlan followed his eyes. Camille saw the calculation happen in real time. Harlan turned toward the dispatch desk. Megan, take lobby camera 3 offline. Maintenance issue. The dispatcher blinked. Right now. Right now. Camille felt the air tighten around her. She reached into her coat, not for the phone, but simply to rest her hand near the pocket where it sat. Harlan noticed. Keep your hands where I can see them. Camille slowly lowered them. You know what that packet is now. Harlan stepped closer. I know you brought something into my station that you had no business carrying. Ethan looked at him. But she had credentials. Harlan turned. Officer Cole, stay out of this. Ethan did not look away. Keller gathered the papers more quickly now. One edge bent beneath his palm. Camille watched him and spoke quietly. The problem is not that you opened my envelope. Harlan's stare hardened. Camille continued. The problem is that you recognized the case number before you opened it. Nobody spoke. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the parking lot. Inside, the red camera light remained on for 3 more seconds. Then it went dark. The red light vanished, and the room seemed colder. Without it. Camille Brooks looked up at the dark camera, then back at Mark Harlan. He had crossed a line, and everyone in the lobby knew it. Harlan turned toward Daniel Keller. Get those papers off the counter. Keller moved quickly, gathering the packet and the loose pages into an uneven stack. Where do you want them? Records room. Camille's voice cut through the silence. You cannot move them. Harlan looked at her. Watch me. The preservation language is clear. You are not giving orders here. Then follow the order already printed in your hand. Harlan's expression hardened. Ethan Cole stood near the records window, his eyes shifting between the packet and the dark camera above them. Camille could see the conflict on his face. He had been trained to follow rank, but he had also been trained to preserve evidence, and those two duties had suddenly moved in opposite directions. Keller tucked the papers under his arm. One page bent against the edge of the counter. Daniel, Camille said, if you move those documents now, the transfer history will show exactly when custody changed. Keller paused. Harlan did not. Keep walking. Keller took 2 steps toward the hallway. Ethan spoke. Sergeant, maybe we should call Captain Crane. Harlan turned so sharply that Ethan stopped mid-breath. No. But if this is federal preservation material. I said no. The answer came with too much force for a routine decision. Camille watched Ethan absorb it. Harlan pointed toward her. Interview room 2. She stays there until I figure out what she brought into this building. Camille did not move. Am I being detained? You are being asked to cooperate. That was not my question. A dispatcher at the desk lowered her eyes. Keller looked away. Harlan stepped closer, stopping several feet from Camille. Do not make this difficult. Camille held his gaze. I walked in here, gave you identification, followed delivery protocol, and warned you not to break a federal seal. I am not the one making this difficult. For a moment, Harlan had no answer. Then he pointed toward the hallway again. Camille chose to walk. Not because he had convinced her, and not because she believed he had authority to rewrite what had happened, but because every second she remained calm made his decisions clearer to everyone watching. Ethan followed several paces behind. As they passed beneath another ceiling camera, Harlan called out from the lobby, "Cole, turn off your body camera." Ethan stopped. Camille stopped too. The hallway filled with the low hum of fluorescent lights. Ethan looked down at the small device clipped to his uniform. A red indicator was glowing. Harlan's footsteps approached behind them. "I said turn it off." Ethan's hand rose toward the camera, then stopped inches away. "Is there a reason?" Harlan stared at him. "Because I gave you an order." Ethan swallowed. Camille could hear his breathing now, shallow and careful. "This may be part of a federal preservation issue." Harlan's voice dropped. "You owe loyalty to this station." Ethan looked toward Keller, who was still holding the damaged packet. Then he looked at Camille. She did not tell him what to do. She did not need to. Ethan lowered his hand. "I am keeping it on." Silence. Harlan stared at him as if he had spoken in another language. Keller shifted uneasily. Camille felt something change in the hallway, small but irreversible. Harlan had tried to control the record. Instead, he had just created a witness who understood why the record mattered. The door to interview room 2 closed with a soft mechanical click, leaving Camille Brooks alone with a metal table, 3 molded chairs, and the steady hum of fluorescent lights overhead. There was no clock on the wall, but she knew only minutes had passed since Daniel Keller broke the seal. Time felt different now. Slower. Heavier. Rain traced thin silver lines down the narrow window beside the door, bending the parking lot lights into blurred streaks of white and amber. Camille placed both hands flat on the table and forced herself to breathe evenly. She could still hear Mark Harlan's voice in the hallway, lower now, urgent enough that individual words disappeared behind the door. Then another voice. "Keller." Then silence. Camille looked toward the small observation window. Nobody stood there. For the first time since entering the station, she allowed the tension in her shoulders to loosen. She was not afraid of paperwork. She was not afraid of procedure. What unsettled her was how quickly procedure had stopped mattering once the wrong people realized it might expose them. Her thoughts returned to Harlan studying the case number before the packet had been opened. That look had lasted less than a second, but she trusted what she had seen. Recognition. Not curiosity. Recognition. Somewhere outside the room, footsteps crossed the hallway. Camille heard Ethan Cole speaking quietly. "Do not touch that." Another voice answered, but she could not make out the words. She rose and moved closer to the window. Through the narrow glass she could see only part of the corridor. Ethan crouched near the wall, wearing a pair of evidence gloves. At his feet lay a small piece of brown paper. The torn edge of the federal seal. He picked it up carefully, placed it inside a clear evidence sleeve, and wrote something across the label. Camille watched his body camera. The red indicator was still glowing. That tiny light felt warmer than anything else in the building. Ethan stood and glanced toward the interview room. Their eyes met through the glass for only a moment. Camille gave no signal. No smile. No nod. He did not need encouragement from her. Whatever decision he was making had to belong to him. He turned away and continued documenting the hallway. Camille returned to the chair. She remembered her mother telling her years earlier that dignity was easiest to talk about when nobody was trying to take it from you. The harder version was quieter. It was answering calmly when someone expected anger. Standing still when someone hoped you would give them an excuse. Knowing who you were even while another person worked hard to misname you. Camille looked at her reflection in the dark portion of the window. A black woman in a wet coat. No badge. No uniform. No visible authority. That had been enough for Harlan to decide she could be dismissed. Yet nothing about the packet had changed because of who carried it. Nothing about federal procedure had changed because Keller doubted her. The truth had remained exactly what it was while everyone argued about whether she deserved to speak it. A faint sound came from the lobby. One click. Then another. Then another, moving through the building in sequence. Camille straightened. Electronic door locks. The hallway outside became suddenly still. Ethan looked toward the ceiling. Keller stepped into view from farther down the corridor, confusion replacing the confidence he had carried minutes earlier. Then Camille's phone vibrated once inside her coat. She removed it and looked at the screen. The message contained only 4 words. Preservation protocol now active. She lowered the phone slowly. Beyond the rain-streaked window, headlights swept across the parking lot. One dark vehicle turned in from the street. Then a second. Then a third. The third vehicle stopped beneath the station lights, and for several seconds nobody inside moved. Rain shimmered across the parking lot as doors opened almost in unison. Men and women in dark jackets stepped out, their movements calm, coordinated, without urgency because urgency was no longer necessary. The building had already been secured. Ethan Cole stood in the hallway with the evidence sleeve still in his hand when the front entrance unlocked from the outside. Mark Harlan emerged from the lobby office. "What is going on?" No one answered him at first. A woman in a navy coat entered carrying a credential wallet at chest level. Deputy United States Marshal Elena Ruiz. Her voice was quiet enough that everyone had to listen. "Effective immediately, this facility is under federal preservation control. Nobody leaves without clearance. Nobody accesses evidence storage, record systems, surveillance equipment, or administrative files without authorization." Harlan stared at her. "You cannot just walk into my station and shut it down." Ruiz looked at him for a moment, then toward the dark lobby camera. "That camera was active 19 minutes ago." Harlan said nothing. It went offline shortly after a sealed federal packet was compromised. Keller appeared behind him, still carrying the damaged envelope. Ruiz's attention moved directly to it. "Put that on the counter." Keller hesitated. "Now." "Officer." He obeyed. Ruiz pulled on gloves and examined the torn seal without touching the documents inside. "Who opened this?" Silence spread through the lobby. Ethan stepped forward. Officer Keller opened it. Sergeant Harlan authorized him to. Harlan turned toward Ethan. "Be careful." Ethan's body camera light remained red. "I am." Camille could hear every word through the interview room door. The lock clicked, and another marshal opened it. "Miss Brooks." Camille stood. "Yes." "You are free to come out." When she entered the hallway, Harlan looked at her as though her presence had suddenly acquired a meaning he had refused to recognize before. Camille did not look triumphant. She looked tired. Ruiz approached her. "Did you complete the transfer?" "No." The evidence custodian was unavailable, and the packet was opened before a receiving code was issued. Ruiz nodded once. "Did anyone instruct you to surrender custody outside protocol?" Camille glanced toward Harlan. "Yes." Ruiz followed her eyes. Harlan stepped forward. "This is being blown completely out of proportion. We had a suspicious delivery, an individual whose authority was unclear, and a document that referenced this facility. I made a judgment call." Camille looked at him. "You never called the verification number." Harlan ignored her. Ruiz did not. "Is that correct?" Ethan answered. "Yes, ma'am." Ruiz turned toward Harlan. "Then you did not make a verification decision. You made an assumption." The words settled heavily. Harlan's face tightened. "You have no idea what happens in this station." Ruiz glanced toward the torn packet. "That is exactly what we are here to determine." A marshal near the dispatch desk raised his hand. "Systems are isolated. External deletion access has been disabled." Another voice came from the records corridor. "Evidence room secured." Then another. "Vehicle gate secured." Click. A door locked somewhere behind them. Click. Another followed upstairs. The sounds traveled through the station one after another, mechanical and absolute. Camille watched Harlan hear each one. For years, those locks had separated his station from everyone outside it. Tonight, they were keeping the truth inside. Ruiz turned to Ethan. "Officer Cole, preserve your body camera exactly as it is." Ethan nodded. "There is something else you should know." Harlan looked at him sharply. Ethan continued. The sergeant recognized that case number before the packet was opened. For the first time since the federal vehicles arrived, Elena Ruiz's expression changed. Did he? Ethan looked directly at her. Yes, ma'am. Ruiz slowly turned toward Harlan. Then we need to talk about how. Elena Ruiz did not repeat the question. She simply waited, and the silence forced Mark Harlan to answer himself. His eyes moved from Ethan Cole to the torn packet, then back to Ruiz. I may have seen the number before. Ruiz's voice stayed even. Where? Reports. Internal paperwork. I do not remember. Ethan spoke from several feet away. You remembered enough to shut down a camera. Harlan looked at him sharply, but Ruiz stepped between the accusation and the reaction before either could grow. Officer Cole, keep your body camera running. Sergeant Harlan, you will not direct anyone else in this building tonight. The words were calm, but they changed the room. Camille Brooks watched Harlan absorb them. Authority did not leave him with a dramatic gesture. It left him through procedure, one instruction at a time. A marshal at the records desk called out, "We have the preservation order fully loaded." Ruiz turned. Read the scope. The marshal looked at the screen. Evidence access logs, surveillance retention records, chain of custody edits, internal deletion history, and supervisor credentials going back 18 months. Keller's face tightened. Camille noticed. Ruiz noticed too. There is more, the marshal said. This operation was already active before the delivery arrived. The packet was the final service step. Harlan looked up. Already active? Ruiz turned toward him. You thought the response began when that seal was broken. She paused. It did not. The room went still again. Camille understood the implication immediately. The federal vehicles had not been summoned from miles away by a single notification. They had been close. Waiting. The packet had been part of a larger investigation already in motion. Keller swallowed. Investigation into what? Ruiz glanced toward the evidence room. That is what your records are going to tell us. Ethan reached slowly into the inside pocket of his uniform shirt. Harlan noticed. What are you doing? Ethan pulled out a small black notebook, worn at the edges from months of use. He held it in both hands for a moment before offering it to Ruiz. You should have this. Ruiz accepted it. What is it? Dates. Times. Evidence room access that did not match assignments. Cameras that went offline without maintenance tickets. Property entries that were changed after midnight. Harlan stared at him. You have been keeping notes on this station. Ethan looked back at him. I have been keeping notes on things that did not make sense. You should have brought concerns through command. Ethan's expression changed, not with anger, but disappointment. I did. Harlan said nothing. Ethan continued. Twice. Ruiz opened the notebook. The pages were filled with careful handwriting, each line marked with a date and time. Who else knows about this? She asked. No one. Why keep it? Ethan looked toward the dark lobby camera. Because things kept disappearing. Keller shifted his weight. Harlan's voice lowered. You owe loyalty to this unit. Ethan looked at him for a long second. I know what silence already cost it. Camille felt those words settle deeper than anything said all night. Ruiz closed the notebook and handed it to another marshal for evidence intake. Log this separately. Photograph every page before transfer. The marshal nodded. Harlan looked toward Camille as if searching for someone to blame. She brought this here. Camille met his eyes. I delivered a packet. You knew what it would do. I knew what the instructions required. Harlan shook his head. You walked in here acting like you were testing us. Camille's voice stayed quiet. No. You were given a procedure. She glanced toward the torn seal. You tested yourselves. Ruiz looked at Camille, then at Ethan, then finally at Harlan. That is enough conversation. Sergeant Harlan and Officer Keller, your system access is suspended. Pending review. You will remain available for interview. No handcuffs. No shouting. No spectacle. Just 2 access cards placed on a counter, 2 computer accounts disabled, and a station finally unable to edit its own story. Outside, the rain had begun to weaken. Inside, the red light on Ethan's body camera was still recording. By 4:30 in the morning, the rain had stopped. North Harbor Police Station no longer felt like the same building Camille Brooks had entered hours earlier. The fluorescent lights still hummed. The same coffee sat cooling behind the dispatch desk. The same department seal remained mounted on the lobby wall. But the certainty that had filled the place was gone. Federal personnel moved quietly through records, evidence storage, and administrative offices, documenting each transfer and preserving every relevant system. Mark Harlan and Daniel Keller sat in separate rooms waiting for formal interviews, their access cards sealed into evidence bags. Nobody had shouted at them. Nobody had humiliated them. Procedure had simply done what arrogance had refused to do. It had slowed everything down long enough for the truth to remain visible. Elena Ruiz approached Camille near the front counter with a replacement custody form. "We can complete your transfer now." Camille signed her name carefully. Ethan Cole stood beside her as the witness. His black notebook had already been photographed and logged, and his body camera recording was secured under federal control. Ruiz examined the damaged packet one last time. The original envelope had been placed beneath a clear protective cover, the federal seal still split across the middle. "We will preserve it exactly like this," she said. Camille looked at the torn paper. "Good." Ruiz studied her for a moment. "Most people would want it repaired." Camille shook her head. "Then someone might forget what happened to it." Just before sunrise, Captain Judith Crane arrived. She had been called back from home and looked as though the drive had aged her several years. Ruiz met with her privately for almost 20 minutes. When Crane finally entered the lobby, she stopped in front of Camille. "Miss Brooks, what happened here should not have happened." Camille waited. Crane continued. "Your identification should have been verified. Your delivery instructions should have been followed. You should have been treated with professionalism from the moment you walked through that door." Camille could have accepted the apology and left. Part of her wanted to. She was exhausted, and the first pale light of morning was already beginning to soften the windows. But she thought about the pizza delivery driver who had walked through without question. She thought about Harlan asking where she had gotten her own identification. She thought about how quickly suspicion had attached itself to her before anyone had made a single verification call. "Captain," Camille said, "I had a federal system behind me tonight." Crane remained silent. "I had a credential, a tracking protocol, and eventually federal marshals outside your building. The next black woman who walks through those doors might have none of that." Crane's eyes lowered slightly. Camille continued. "She might just be reporting something. She might be asking for help. She might be carrying documents nobody recognizes. If your people only listen after someone more powerful arrives, then the problem is bigger than 2 officers." Ethan stood several feet away, listening. Crane looked toward the front desk, then toward the dark camera that Harlan had ordered shut down. "You are right," she said. The words were quiet, but Camille believed them because Crane did not defend herself afterward. Before Camille left, Crane ordered an independent review of intake procedures, identification verification, evidence handling, and complaint records involving Harlan's shift. Ethan's documentation would be examined as part of the federal investigation, and Harlan and Keller would remain removed from operational duty pending the outcome. Nothing was magically fixed before breakfast. Justice rarely worked that way. But the machinery had finally turned in the right direction. Camille stepped through the front doors just after dawn. The air smelled clean after the storm. Water gathered along the curb, reflecting the first orange light above the rooftops. She stopped beside her car and looked back through the glass. Ethan was standing inside near the counter, speaking with Ruiz. The red light on his body camera was finally off. Its job was finished. On the evidence table behind them, the torn seal remained visible beneath clear plastic. Camille realized that the most important part of the night was not that powerful people had eventually listened to her. It was that one ordinary officer had decided to stop looking away before he knew how the story would end. Courage had not sounded like a speech. It had sounded like a quiet refusal to turn off a camera. Integrity had not arrived with flashing lights. It had begun with someone choosing the record over loyalty to the wrong thing. Camille opened her car door as sunlight reached the station windows. For years, Harlan had probably believed authority meant deciding whose voice mattered. That morning, the lesson left behind was simpler. Authority without accountability is only power, and power does not become justice until it is willing to answer to the truth. Camille drove away without looking back again, leaving one question behind for everyone inside that station, and perhaps for anyone hearing her story: when the truth enters the room without status, wealth, or protection, do we recognize it because it is true, or only after someone powerful tells us to listen?